Durkheim's anomic division of labor, while accounting for the interrupting of societal coordination, fails to account for the morally and legally normative nature of exploitation as described by Marx. More accurately, the regulatory structures that arise to resolve anomie integrate society while potentially functioning as the very structures that further normalize exploitation. This non-pathological yet non-positive state of solidarity, unaccounted for by Durkheim, is encapsulated in the surreal satirical film American Psycho. The film's depiction of class domination within a regulated order serves as a case study for evaluating the limits of Durkheim's theory from a Marxist perspective. For Durkheim, anomie is a pathological breakdown in social coordination caused by the division of labor outpacing the legal and moral regulation of society. It manifests as a lack of solidarity within society and societal strife, such as labor strikes, due to failure of coordination between differentiated roles. However, Durkheim understands the division of labor to ultimately tend towards organic solidarity, a positive solidarity which promotes active cohesion of individuals within the social organism. He therefore posits anomie as a temporary misalignment that societies of organic solidarity self-correct through new moral and legal regulation. Marx's class struggle is a reproduction of the capitalist relation, the exploitation of the laborer class who must sell their labor power to live by the capitalist class for surplus value in order to further accumulate capital. In order for anomie to account for this relation, the exploitation of the laborer must be a state of non-normativity that arises from dysregulation. American Psycho, when excluding its surrealism, portrays a world of regulation that fulfills Durkheim's conditions for organic solidarity. This is clear when observing its highly developed capitalist setting and minimized collective consciousness, as illustrated by the film's satirical portrayal of virtue signaling, wherein the individualistic characters use knowledge of global ills to gain social recognition only to behave in their own self-interest. Yet the film simultaneously exhibits the systemic exploitation central to class struggle, and this quality is further highlighted by the film's surreal elements. Thus, interrogation of the social dynamics and surrealism of the film will reveal the theoretical discrepancy between anomie and class struggle. The film follows the perspective of Wall Street investment banker Patrick Bateman. The film makes it explicit that his father owns the company and he does not need to work.
Your father practically owns the company. You can do anything you like, silly.
His co-workers share similarly wealthy backgrounds. At work, everyone blows off responsibilities in favor of leisure and consumption. As such, Bateman can be understood to have a bourgeois career devoid of exploitation and relying on some form of birthright. Thus, in order to understand the film's perspective on class struggle, we analyze how the film portrays interactions between Bateman and the laboring class. Marx's concept of labor exploitation is conveyed in the film's surreal portrayal of contempt towards laborers, which a Durkheimian lens would interpret as anomic strife. Throughout the movie, he abuses service workers.
$25.
You're a fucking ugly bitch. I want to stab you to death, then play around with your blood.
Would you like to hear the...
Double absolute martini.
Yes, sir. Would you like to hear the specials?
Not if you want to keep your spleen.
Yet the laboring class seems unfazed. According to the director, the film's narration is reliable. Thus, the audience must interpret the surreal nature of laborers not responding to such outrageous remarks. A Marxist interpretation understands that these laborers are exploited within the confines of the job from which they interact with Bateman. Thus, given the satirical nature of the film, we can understand the toleration of verbal abuse as a manifestation of the structurally compelled state that they endure in order for survival. Furthermore, their lack of reaction represents a relinquishing of autonomy and acceptance of the exploitation as expected. This in turn aligns with Marx's understanding that under capitalism the laborer must give up their body to survive. For Durkheim's theory, these interactions signal the anomic disintegration of social cohesion. Yet instead of collapse, American Psycho exhibits functional social order exemplified by the laboring class's composure amidst the lack of social cohesion brought upon through exploitation. Thus, instead of a pathological lack of solidarity, we observe American Psycho to be a state of normative regulation that integrates this treatment of the laborer. Additionally, the film illustrates the function of the relative surplus population within the class struggle and how it is sustained by a moral regulation Durkheim cannot account for. Bateman encounters a homeless man in an alley whom he berates for not having a job.
Get a goddamn job, Al. You got a negative attitude. That's what's stopping you.
and then falsely promises to help him find one. The man reacts with grateful hope, as if forgetting the abuse. It is tempting to label this homelessness as anomie, a complete detachment from the social organism. Yet from a Marxist perspective, there is a regulatory function of the homeless. The homeless represent the relative surplus population, a segment of the population maintained unemployed to function as a tool of wage suppression by representing the perpetual threat of replacement to the employed. The homeless man's desperation is thus not a sign of his isolation from the social organism, but rather his functional integration within the logic of capitalism. In order to understand the homeless as a part of the regulatory development of capitalism within Durkheim's theory, there must be an adjacent moral framework that permits it. Thus, we come to understand Bateman's scornful attitude of "get a job" as a channeling of the individualist morality of organic solidarity, and propels the homeless to act as the reserve population in a manner that exploits their existence to regulate the labor market. Ultimately, Bateman ends his charitable charade and kills the man in cold blood. The murder is never mentioned again. Bateman faces no consequences. To Durkheim, division of labor is driven by increasing volume and density of population, which suggests that it always develops towards the social cohesion of the entirety of the population. However, the film portrays that rather than an absence of a soon-to-be-developed legal framework, there is a regulatory framework that protects capitalist class structure through isolating and devaluing the members of the relative surplus population. The capitalist framework also uses market logic to absorb conflict. When Bateman approaches a sex worker he previously abused, she appeals to the legal system in hopes of restitution.
Have you been?
Well, I actually might need a little surgery after last time.
Really?
My friend told me I should maybe even get a lawyer.
Which he immediately neutralizes with a cash payment.
Lawyers are so complicated. I'll do that.
This exchange functionally absolves him of his abuse via transaction, because without strong collective consciousness, all that holds him accountable is contractual law. Durkheim understands this as fundamental moral development under the division of labor, signifying the shift from vengeance to repair. Yet instead of a tool of justice, legal invocation institutes a price for violence, reducing moral transgression to payable debt. This encounter exemplifies the sex worker's body as a site of class conflict through the abuse it tolerates due to lack of wealth. Thus, the legal system and economic relations act as normalizing systems as Durkheim proposes. This demonstrates how capitalism regulates class struggle through the economic state that defines it. The film's conclusion conveys the culmination of the theoretical difference between Marx and Durkheim, that being a regulated social order can produce anomic feelings within individuals while protecting the class struggle from which they originate. The movie follows Bateman's murderous rampage, including killing one of his colleagues and using their apartment to store other victims. In a moment in which he is in over his head, he goes back to the apartment to find that it has been completely cleaned and already back on the market.
Are you my 2 o'clock?
No.
Can I help you?
I'm looking for Paul Allen's place. Doesn't he live here?
No, he doesn't.
Subsequently, he tries to confess, yet is not believed.
I killed Paul Allen. And I liked it. I can't make myself any clearer.
But that's simply not possible.
The film ends with the quote,
My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. No new knowledge can be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing.
Bateman, as the CEO's son, personifies the bourgeois, and the surreal exoneration of his crimes demonstrates the regulatory framework of class struggle protecting capital by means of disposing of any threat to its order. The moral order bends to protect and serve him, yet internally he has completely lost perspective on his place in society. In a manner similar to Anomie, he feels as if morality is completely lost. The film conveys, as Marx, the possibility of a complete social order which operates on exploitation counter to morality based in equality of right. Thus, the shortcomings of Anomie and Durkheim's framework become clear. Anomie can diagnose Bateman's personal crisis, yet fails to identify the world that produces it. The external world remains fully functional and regulated without issue. the harm arises from the exploitative social relations it sustains. Conclusively, Anomie proves inadequate to account for class struggle because it only functions to identify breakdowns in solidarity, but cannot account for forms of solidarity reproduced through exploitation under class struggle.